Welcome back to Wednesday Night Live. It is Wednesday night, March 11th, 2015, and I am your award-winning host, Ralph Lillig, and I'm glad you're back to join us again. We have some things tonight that I think will be hopefully thought-provoking and informative. So have a pencil and paper ready. There might be a few things you want to make notes of. And remember also that the program you're watching tonight will be rebroadcast on Monday at 1 p.m. in the afternoon. So if there's something that you missed here and you thought, oh, I should have made a note, if you get a chance, watch it again Monday at 1 p.m. And hopefully we'll have a live broadcast next Wednesday. Last Wednesday we were unable to do a live broadcast. We did a rebroadcast of a previous show. I hope you enjoyed it. At any rate, let's get right to it. And as I do every week at this time, let me remind you about Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center. And as I always do, I'm going to read from their mission statement. Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center is a Christ-centered nonprofit ministry offering life-affirming alternatives to abortion and compassionate care to those who face pregnancy and abortion-related issues. Compassion and Hope Pregnancy is the antithesis of everything Planned Parenthood. The Compassion and Hope people are all about life. They want to preserve life, bring new life into the world, and give it a healthy start. But they don't get the millions or billions of dollars that they get, that the Planned Parenthood people get. They don't have the support of the LGBTQ community and all the other people that have tons of money to pour into their pet projects. So Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center needs your help, and I hope you will. Won't you please consider give them a call at 208-478-HOPE. Very easy to remember, 478-HOPE. Give a mother and a soon-to-be-born child some hope, some compassion and hope. Now, they're just finishing up their annual fundraiser where they distribute baby formula bottles, and hopefully you've seen them at your church or in some other place, and hopefully you've put a nice check in there or some cash, some change. If you do see one of those bottles, give generously. They need your help. They have one paid staff, but they do a lot of good work, and they only have about 3 days a week in which to do their work. Some of those are only half days, but they need your help. 478-HOPE. God will bless you, and you'll be happy that you helped an expectant mother, a mother who has just given birth, and a new baby. It's always better to bring life into the world. I'm on the honor guard here locally for the veterans group, the Pocatello Veterans Honor Guard. In fact, we have a funeral tomorrow. We had a couple of funerals last weekend. At the funeral, one of the other honor guard members asked me if I would pass along some information, and I got a chance actually to read it today. I've been busy enough that I didn't get to read it in the last couple, but I want to share it with you. And if you haven't already got that pencil and paper, and if there's one close to you, please do write this down and see if you want to get involved on this. You could really help here. This is I can't show you the picture. It's just not big enough to put it up on the screen. You can see a mother and father and a child here. This is Riggin James Page. And Riggin James Page is 2 years old, born with Kleefstra syndrome, a rare genetic condition in which a tiny piece is missing from near the end of one of the body's 46 chromosomes. This little guy has been through many surgeries. He had a feeding tube placed in the NICU, feeding tube closure, open heart surgery, hypospadias repair, ear tubes, double hernia repair, and adenoid removal, all before his 2nd birthday. Through all of this, he's so happy all the time and has the best personality, and he can steal your heart the first time you meet him. We're so grateful for your support and excited to celebrate his continued fight with this bull riding fundraiser on April 11th, 2015. Bull riding fundraiser. Now, it's called Beat the Odds Benefit Bull Riding. I know that's a long name, but think about it for a minute. Beat the Odds Benefit Bull Riding. The Beat the Odds Benefit Bull Riding people have a bull riding yearly to help the family of a critically ill child by donating all the money made through donations, sponsors, auctions, and a raffle. And this year, the event will be at the Bannock County Fairgrounds in the indoor arena, and that's the big white tent. You're familiar with that. That'll be Friday, April the 10th from 6 p.m., and that'll be a meet and greet. And then Saturday, 11th April from 11:30 a.m., they'll have the Exceptional Kids Rodeo. Saturday the 11th at 12:30, they'll have the mini bull riding. And then at 1 p.m., they'll have the benefit bull riding, 3 sections, and a short go. Throughout the day, we will have a silent auction and raffle. Between each section of bull riding, we will be auctioning off large items. Now, I think I saw in one of these that they're auctioning off, there we go, yeah. It says, try your luck, win this saddle. And if you have horses, I don't have to tell you about the expensive saddles. It says, beat the odds benefit bull riding for the Rig and Page benefit, Saturday the 11th at the Bannock County Fairgrounds Indoor Arena. 5 tickets for $20. You can't beat that with a stick. 5 tickets for $20 or 1 ticket for $5. So if you buy 5 for $20, it's what, $4 a piece, and 1 is $5. And it goes for a good cause. And I wish I could share these pictures of this little guy, cute as can be, and certainly a worthy cause. Now, if you want to sponsor, if you'd like to be a sponsor for this, let's see if I can give you a phone number here. They have various, yes, here we go. You ready? Write this down, please. You can contact Beat the Odds Benefit Bull Riding, care of Shasta Dixon, D-I-X-O-N, Shasta Dixon, at 10118 South Hall Road in McCammon. And phone number for Shasta Dixon. And you know, don't call after 9 at night. I know if you want to help, you probably about 9:30 or 10, you say, oh, wait a minute, about that bull riding. I always say if you're going to call somebody, call them from 9 to 9, catch them. So, but get hold of Shasta Dixon. She might be mad at me for limiting this, but call her at 317-2269, 317-2269. Or you can email, and boy, this is a long email. It's all one word, beat the odds benefit bull riding at gmail.com. Beat the odds benefit bull riding at gmail.com. Now, if you want to be a contributing sponsor, you can do that. And you'll get your name in the program. A bronze sponsorship level will get a 1/4-inch ad in the program. Silver sponsorship, 1/2-inch page ad in the program, or a 1/2-page ad in the program. A banner in the arena, VIP seating, and name announced through the day. And then platinum sponsorship, and this is the big one, $1,000. Pardon me, they have you will get a full-page ad in the program, name on the flyer, banner in the bucking shooter areas, and the first five $1,000 sponsors will be on the bucking chutes and the outgates, VIP seating, and name announced throughout the day. Now, if you want to contribute to this and you don't necessarily want to be a sponsor, but you'd like to help, please make your checks payable to Beat the Odds Benefit Bull Riding, and contact Shasta Dixon at 317-2269, and she'll give you the lowdown on that. Now, we have a couple of weeks more before this event, so I'm going to remind you next week, and then April 10th, and it'll be over, you know, into April 11th. But please keep that in mind. Riggin James Page, 2 years old. What a cute little guy. And those of you who, and I think a lot of you watching, maybe a lot of you are grandparents by now, but you know how difficult it can be when your child has just normal childhood illnesses. Think of this little guy's had open heart surgery and hypospadia repair and ear tubes and all that. That gets expensive. So if you can help, again, I'm sure God will bless you, and you'll be happy that you helped somebody that really needed some help. There's been a lot of talk on the news. Boy, there's so much going on. The Hillary Clinton thing is hopefully not going to go away. The Clinton gang have been riding high since back in the 80s and in the 70s when they had the governorship of Arkansas, and the Arkansas Mafia was riding high. They still are, but they just don't have the Clinton gang riding under that brand anymore. But the Clinton gang has been riding hard for years, and now, well, hopefully, you know, it amazes me. There were some statistics on the television tonight that I think it was 86% of Democrats think that Hillary Clinton would make a good president. And I'm thinking, what cloud do they drift around on? What planet are they from? Hillary Clinton has been nothing but a crook in one form or another since she entered politics, since she was a kid out of college. And she still has her little circle of friends, the same people who defended her whitewater problems and her, remember when she put out $1,000 and made $1 million in beef futures or whatever it was? Same people are still her law offices, the ones that she covered up for. And then you had the controversy following her like Vince Foster. We never did hear it. We never got a resolution on the death of Vince Foster. But as you may recall, Vince Foster was found dead in the park adjacent to the White House, and his body was perfectly posed, and supposedly killed and committed suicide, but there was no weapon. There was so many bizarre things. I don't even remember all the bizarre things. You can Google it. Vince Foster death, I guess you'd call it. Then they had to decide which one of the federal agencies are going to investigate this. Then there were the Travelgate folders that the Senate or the House, somebody was looking for, couldn't find them, and then they just spontaneously appeared on a table in the foyer of the White House or someplace, I don't know. Just magically appeared. Subpoenas didn't get them, investigation didn't get them, but they just magically appeared. And this has been a history of the Clinton gang from day one. I mean, they just have never done anything above board. Secretive about everything, except those things that got exposed, like the blue dress. And of course, Wild Bill, you know, he couldn't behave himself no matter what. But by golly, there was, you remember Hillary was not going to be that little gal baking cookies and standing by her man. And boy, when his presidency was in jeopardy, which meant, remember, they called her the co-president or the associate president. I think it was the co-president. When his presidency was on the rocks, there she was standing by her man. I don't think she baked any cookies. I mean, it has just been one crooked thing after another for 30 years, 40 years, whatever it is. And it just goes from bad to worse. The woman is 67 years old. She's starting to look like she's 77 years old. Her youthful figure has gone to a very definite bell shape, and they're having a harder and harder time. And you know, I shouldn't say this. It sounds like I'm attacking her appearance, but she doesn't appear to me to be what I would expect the president to look like. Not after all we've seen. You remember when they left the White House broke, and they were only getting $1 million each for their speaking engagements or something like that. And now this latest thing, another something gate, having to do with her emails on her personal phone. Now tonight on Kelly File on Fox News, and I try to catch her. She's starting to get a little obnoxious, almost as bad as Bill O'Reilly, who I don't watch anymore. I just got tired of him always interrupting everybody and answering his own questions while the guests sat there with a dumb look, you know. And Kelly's starting to get something like that. I'm going to give her a little slack because she's a tigress. She does go after some things. And tonight she interviewed a fellow, I forget his name, it's Shannon something or other, who brought to light this business about a form, FO12 or something like that, some form that every single person in the State Department is required to sign when they leave the State Department, saying that they have not taken anything with them, they haven't hidden any files, whatever it is. And lo and behold, we don't know. Looks like Hillary might have signed that, saying that she was not allowed to keep emails on her personal phone. She was not allowed to keep all this stuff in a sequestered place in her, whatever that home is, the Chappaquiddick or whatever it is. Oh, no, that's the Kennedy gang, I'm sorry. Chappaqua. Similar areas. Isn't it amazing the similarities, Chappaquiddick, Chappaqua, New York. And she had Secret Service protection, and she had her own server and all kinds of things. It's the same old thing. Like when she sat there during the initial investigations in Benghazi, and she got really angry because she does not like to be put on the spot. She does not like to be questioned. She's the boss. And if you don't like it, you can be a Vince Foster, who was her very close and dear friend. And she said, at this point, what difference does it make? And of course, she was talking about the murders of 4 Americans, including the ambassador to Libya. What difference does it make at this point? And she really got angry about that. And now we find that it's the same old story. And yet in this case, she was the Secretary of State, one of the most powerful positions in our government as far as speaking out and you know, representing us to the world. And she was hiding emails and hiding conversations. Who was she talking about? What was she talking about? Well, we may never know. And I'm just so glad that this fellow Gowdy, Trey Gowdy from South Carolina, who is a former prosecutor, kind of an oddball looking little guy. He's always got a funny kind of a haircut, and but he's a tiger. He's a soldier, and he's going after this stuff. And I hope it's not all for show, because he seems very, certainly capable. He seems very sincere, but it looks like he's going to get some answers. We can only hope. And we can only hope that Hillary Clinton does not be, she is no Margaret Thatcher. Well, anyway, so there are a lot of things going on in the news now that are just, they make you wonder about our government. They wonder, you have to wonder about our security, our nation's security. What has the Obamanist done to us? Now, Charles Krauthammer, Dr. Krauthammer, who's a medical doctor and a psychiatrist, brilliant man. He's on Fox regularly, and he has a syndicated column, and he is very insightful. He writes very well, and he was giving a speech not too long ago someplace, and I'm obviously going to paraphrase what he said. But one of the things he pointed out is, regardless of what guys like me think, you know, if you think this pretender to the throne is a buffoon, which I do. I think he's a buffoon. He has no business, but he's a clever buffoon, and he has basically done everything he set out to do. Remember 6.5 years ago when he said we are going to transform the United States of America, the way we do things. I forget the proper term of it. And many of us looking at him thought, what does that mean? Some people knew what he meant, and you know, it's no different from when Hitler wrote Mein Kampf. Hitler said, he told the world what he was going to do to the Jews. He told the world what his aspirations for Germany were. He didn't hide any of it. And Obama has written a couple of books, or somebody's written them for him, however it is, and he said he was going to transform the way we do things in this country, and he has done it. Did you ever, in your wildest expectations, expect that we would ever see a Benghazi, where our government abandoned 4 Americans and just let them be murdered, including an ambassador? Did you ever think that we would see this email gate, if you will? Did you ever think you would see socialized medicine crushing us under Obamacare? Did you ever think you would see the president build his own police department with the TCA and the Department of Homeland Security, which is, they have, even the Environmental Protection Agency has SWAT teams that go into places masked like some thugs from third world countries, armed to the teeth with bulletproof vests and all that. The EPA, I mean, did you ever think that you would see where you looked at our government from the top down and you wondered, you know, like Pogo said, we have seen the enemy and the enemy are us. I think that's how it was. Pogo is an old cartoon strip for you younger people. Look it up. It was very insightful. It was politically, well, by today's standard, it wouldn't be very politically correct, but it was prescient in things like, we have seen the enemy and the enemy are us. And so now we see, did we ever think that we would see a White House that is dominated by, in my opinion, a Marxist Muslim? And you can tell me all you want to about it being a Christian. I don't believe it. Because as I've said before, if it walks with ducks, talks with ducks, eats with ducks, and is always seen in the company of ducks, it's probably a duck. And that's all we see with this guy. So recently, what is it, a week ago now, Netanyahu addressed the Congress. And boy, what a flap that has caused. And it's not going away. The Obamanists do not like this, because Netanyahu has told the world exactly what Islam has in store for us, and how Iran plans to implement Sharia for the world. And they will implement a one-world caliphate. And if they get the opportunity, and they're very close to it, thank you to Mr. Obama, they get the opportunity to develop an atomic weapon, or several of them, it is their stated intention to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. Now think about that for a moment. A nation of 7 million people in a country about the size of New Jersey, one of the most progressive democratic countries in the entire region, and in fact in the world for that technologically advanced, very productive. And Iran, who would like us to go back to 7th century thinking through Sharia, wants to wipe that nation, a nation, off the face of the earth. And then when they do that, they want to wipe us off the face of the earth, the Americans. So Netanyahu was invited by John Boehner, not one of my favorite people. I think he's a weak-kneed sob sister, and I'm sorry that he's the Speaker of the House, the second most powerful position in the country. I mean, if the President goes and the Vice President goes, Speaker of the House is next in line. That's a pretty powerful position, and yet he's getting some pushback from the ranks. And there are about 50 truly small R Republican conservatives that are not towing the mark with the good old boy system. That really, if you look at the Republican Party today, it's just the Democrats with an R. Really, I mean, there's very little difference. Now, the Democrats are working hard through their failed leadership, I would say. They are working hard to shift even further left. I don't know what they plan to do with this if we go any further left than where we are now. But there are 50 genuine small R Republicans in the Republican Party who are making life a little bit difficult for Mr. Boehner. That having been said, Boehner invited Prime Minister of Israel, the #1 guy in Israel, invited him to speak before a joint session of the Congress, of the House and Senate. The tolerant, always gracious, loving, all that Democrats, 50 of them boycotted this. Now, what kind of representatives are these? They boycotted the thing where the Prime Minister of Israel is going to speak, and 50 Democrats boycott because they're so upset because their boy has been put on the spot, their boy being Obama. Obama is very upset about this because, among other things, we are seeing the emperor with no clothes. We're seeing him for what he really is. He has no leadership skills. This is a community organizer that never amounted to anything before he was in the White House, who was thrust into the White House completely unprepared to be a leader. Now, an organizer perhaps, but not a leader. And Netanyahu comes and speaks, and when you watched him, and I hope you did, I watched the whole thing, it was riveting. Netanyahu is the epitome of a leader. By the way, let me show this to you. You won't be able to see it really, really well, but here's a picture that I think says everything that needs to be said. There's a picture side by side, and I think these are both when these men were aged 20. And there's Mr. Obama in the gangster hat, smoking a doobie, eyes all squinted from the smoke, looking really cool. And next to him is Benjamin Netanyahu in his military garments about to go off to war, 20 years old. Which one of these is a patriot? Which one of these is a true leader? Which one of these has truly served his nation? Netanyahu was decorated many times for his feats and was wounded at least twice in defense of his country. And here you have, it couldn't be more stark. You've got this, I don't even know how to describe this character in the hat being cool, smoking a joint, and you've got the future leader of Israel preparing for war to defend his nation. One of them is doing it the best he can to undermine our nation, our Constitution, our very way of life, giving it over to the Muslims. And the other is trying to defend his little nation against the entire Muslim world, basically. Which one of those is a true leader, true statesman? It certainly isn't the guy in the hat with the doobie. There's another picture similar to this that I saw on the internet last year, actually, when there was another comparison that the White House didn't like to see. Showed this same picture of Obama next to George W. Bush. And remember, when Bush was president, the press, the left, the Democrats were unrelenting in talking about how dumb he was. Here's a guy who has 2 master's degrees, one of them in economics, a degree from Harvard and a degree from Yale, who was a fighter pilot in, I think it was the Air National Guard. And there was a photograph of him all suited up with his parachute and his helmet in hand, going up the ladder to get into the cockpit of his, I think it was flying F-104s, not sure about which aircraft. And at age 20, I think it was, next to this bum in this picture. And yet this bum has the most powerful seat in the world, the presidency of the United States, and is leading us down the drain. It's astonishing. Well, anyway, so Netanyahu has caused one heck of a furor in Democrat politics. Republicans, most of us, I think, and I'm a Republican. Let me kind of clarify this. When I originally started this program, I guess it's been about 5 years ago now, the idea really was to bring you information about what was happening in politics locally, who was who in the zoo, and to be a voice for the local Bannock County Republican Party, because they really weren't getting much voice then. And the Republican Party was going through a big shift from the good old boy system that worked, the smoke-filled rooms, so to speak, figuratively speaking, who worked hand in glove with the Democrats behind the scenes, all of them working to get the same goals, which was ensuring power for certain people. And the fact that they had an R after their name or the D, the old Republican, Bannock County Republican Party, it didn't matter. I shared with you about a high-ranking party member who during an election about 4 years ago, and he was a party leader, one of the party leadership during the election, was putting up Democrat signs on his fence. And I took him to task on that. I said, what are you doing? You call yourself a Republican, you're always cheerleading about what are we doing, trying to raise money and all that stuff. And then you're putting Democrat signs on your front yard? Well, they're my friends. No principles at all. They're my friends. Well, yeah, the Republicans and the Democrats in Bannock County worked, in spite of what you may have seen up front, a number of them who've gone to school together, married together, go to church together, everything else, have been supporting each other behind the scenes, and they don't really care about the R and the D, other than a club rivalry like you might see in your high school against the other high school team. So about 6 years ago, there was a big shift that started coming into the local Republican Party. And the Republican Party started turning, pardon the expression, Republican, with a small r. Republican constitutionalists. Republicans who believe that the Constitution actually is the bedrock of our community, of our United States, and that it should be supported. Well, since then, this has took about 4.5 or 5 years to happen, but certain people within the party, certain people within the party leadership, have managed to squander what we were doing to try to make the Republican Party locally relevant to the community. And they have managed, Steve Brown, sitting on the city council, was one of those who engineered a shutdown, basically, of the local Republican Party. He and Evan Frazier and some other people in the leadership. Now, Evan Frazier is not sitting in a leadership position, but he is very much a string puller for the puppets. They engineered an overthrow of the small r Republicans, got us all out of the party, and made us inoperative by forcing the party to have standards that can't be met. For instance, the Republican Party today can't get a quorum to do business. That was engineered by Steve Brown and Evan Frazier. And they did that deliberately, so that now, in order to be able to conduct business for the Bannock County Republican Party, 51% of the precinct committeemen have to be present. You'll never get 51% of them present. It hasn't happened since phone calls were made to get people in that never showed up for meetings, but had been elected or somehow got into office. They all showed up one night, voted this thing in, and now no official business gets done by the Bannock County Republican Party. An interesting chain of events, the way things have turned here. Now, there is a group here, and you need to know about this. Those of you who watch me are you either hate my guts or you're listening to what I have to say. There doesn't seem to be too much middle in that. So, but I'm speaking to those of you who want to hear what I have to say. The Republican Liberty Caucus is a caucus within the Republican Party that is, it has gone nationwide, because what's happened here in Bannock County has happened in many places nationally. The Republican Party has had so many problems from within because the good old boys, represented by guys like Boehner and McConnell in the Senate, The good old boys don't want conservative Republicans. They want to be able to do business as usual. And it doesn't matter to them whether it's an R or a D after the name, as long as they can raise the money to stay in power. And that's what it's all about. Some of these people have no aspirations except to be in power, which has happened here locally. So the Republican Liberty Caucus is a group right here in Bannock County, as well as across the state, because the whole state is having problems, whose job it is or whose design it is to do the work of Republicans as we understand it constitutionally. In other words, to bring conservative Republicans into the fold and get those conservative Republican values that most of this county, the people who will do it, actually want those Republican values. They don't want the good old boy system any more than I do. I just happen to have a platform where I can speak out against the good old boy system as it is. But for any useful purpose, the Republican Party, the Bannock County Republican Party, does not represent a large number of Republicans in this county. So the Republican Liberty Caucus, which is nationally recognized, chartered, and the whole thing, they are now doing the business of the conservatives in the Republican Party. And when I say the conservatives, I probably need to quantify that a little bit. It has to do with little things like, you remember the big flap? I think O'Donnell and some of the other people in the paper tried to really stick a thumb in the eye of the local Republican Party. A couple of years ago, when they came up with this thing where you had to sign in blood that you were a dedicated Republican and all that, well, they took something out of whack and they tried to diminish it and you know, make fun of it. The Democrats already had something like that, by the way, and still have. But basically there was a form that Republicans were asked to sign, those who were holding office, saying, yes, I support the Republican platform for the state of Idaho. Now, why would you be a Republican if you didn't support the platform? Democrats already have something like that, but they don't get any thumb in the eye for it, only the Republicans. Well, it turns out that a whole lot of the leadership did not support the Republican platform. They did a little cherry picking. They liked this, but they didn't like that. That's fine, except if you're going to run for office in any party, I don't care if you're libertarian or communist, you should agree with the goals of that party, with that platform. And so we found that there were a number of people here in the Bannock County Republican Party that didn't. Matter of fact, a couple of people whose names I won't mention, but they were overheard, party leadership, overheard talking about how the Constitution is antiquated and outdated and needs to be done away with. Republicans were saying this. Anyway, well, so now we're doing a real mishmash in thing here, because I'm trying to get to information and misinformation, what's going on. So Netanyahu, so here was a letter, March 6th, and it kind of got off point because the Democrats have made their voice clear. They don't like Netanyahu and anything he has to say. Netanyahu has been trying to save the world, in a manner of speaking, and we had that big flap. And we have the same thing happening within our Republican Party here. Those of us who are constitutional conservatives are really on the outs. And we're part of the caucus. Well, anyway, here's a letter to the editor, Friday, March 6th, on the Idaho State Journal. And this came out of Camas, Washington. Why it had to be in the local journal, I don't know, but it says, Netanyahu, Israel's militantly annexationist and politically right-wing Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was in the United States recently to bellyache to our Congress about how tremendously wrong-headed the idea of negotiating with Iran happens to be. Excuse me. I wonder what this guy's political leanings are. Netanyahu has been pounding the drums for a preemptive strike on Tehran's nuclear facilities virtually from the time he became Israel's prime minister, and on occasion he has hinted that the Jewish state might carry out such an attack on its own. Now, why would the Jewish state tolerate a nuclear Iran when they can be hit within 20 minutes and be wiped off the face of the earth? He spoke to a friendly audience of mostly conservative Republicans while in D.C. Not mostly. There are some in there, but there were a lot of conservative Republicans there that wanted to hear the message. Believe it or not, there were a few conservative Democrats wanted to hear it too. The man is quite brazenly playing demagogic political games at the expense of Obama and company. Yeah, we've never seen that from Obama and company. It is therefore not too surprising that administration spokespersons would love to slap Netanyahu away like some sort of pesky bug. His antics would appear to give Obama's people some justification for their attitude. Benjamin Netanyahu and his ruling coalition in Israel are deeply dedicated to the idea of a greater Israel, and that's hogwash. And his stance is manifested obviously in their generous treatment of the movement to settle Jews in the occupied territories. The state of Israel has been sponsoring Jews to come to Israel for a long time. Jews who are in occupied lands, Jews who are in Europe, with the amount of anti-Semitism that is rampant and is even going on in our nation, we would hope that we are above being these anti-Semitic things that are happening, but we're not. Our nation has a big black eye for some of the things that are happening on our university campuses and in politics. And so when this guy makes this statement about expansion, that's bullpucky. What they are doing is providing homes for Jews in the Jewish homeland so that they will have a place of some security. Well, so it goes on. These settlements possess not a shred of international legality, and we're going to talk about international legality in a minute. But this has not stopped Netanyahu's people from devoting enormous material support to Jewish pioneering efforts in the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the Golan Heights. Netanyahu and his fellow Likud politicians aren't about to let something like international laws get in the way of building greater Israel. They're even willing to poke sticks in the eyes of American government officials over technicalities. Their behavior and their attitudes are thoroughly outrageous, but Netanyahu and his cronies won't modify their comportment for anything. We heard from Netanyahu how miserably dangerous and unfair it is for Obama to be negotiating with Iran. It won't amount to anything substantive, but Netanyahu's speech will be cheered to the skies by our congressional Republicans. And this is from some character named Frank W. Goheen of Camas, Washington. And I think it's illustrative of the Idaho State Journal. They had to sink into this quagmire of crap, pardon the expression, to make their anti-Semitic point by some guy that lives in another state so that they can make an attack here, and in my opinion, an anti-Semitic attack. Now, hey Josh, I'm going to throw you a curve on our lineup here. Let's look at number 3. And okay, give me a thumbs up when you're ready to go, and we'll talk about that. Let's talk about the legality of Israel's existence. And in this case, it'll be Alan Dershowitz, who is a Harvard School professor. Alan Dershowitz is not what you would call a right-wing conspirator. All right, please watch this.
Countries that have come into existence in the last century, no country's birth certificate is more legitimate than that of Israel. One reason is that many of the men who founded the country, Theodore Herzl, Zeb Jabotinsky, David Ben-Gurion, Menachem Begin, Yitzhak Shamir, were either lawyers or had legal training. They were obsessed with making it legal. Unlike almost every other country, lawyers, not generals, were the midwives of Israel's birth, or more accurately, rebirth, since it had existed as an independent country twice before in history. Step by legal step, Israel moved legally toward nationhood, from the Balfour Declaration in 1917 to the San Remo Agreement in 1920, to the League of Nations Resolution in 1922, to the Anglo-American Convention on Palestine in 1924, to the partition of land ordained by the United Nations in 1947 into a nation-state for the Jewish people and an Arab state. Yet immediately upon its lawful establishment in 1948 as the nation-state of the Jewish people, Israel was illegally attacked by all the surrounding Arab states, as well as by elements of the local Arab population. In defending its right to exist during that war, Israel lost 1% of its population, including many civilians and Holocaust survivors. It also lost some of the land assigned to it by the United Nations. It captured other land from the aggressors that was originally assigned to the Arab state. The end result of that war against Israel was an armistice line that prevailed until 1967, when Israel was once again attacked by Jordan during Israel's war with Egypt and Syria. Between 1948 and 1967, despite the armistice, Arab terrorists continue to infiltrate Israeli borders and to injure and kill Israeli citizens. That was part of an official policy by the surrounding governments and by leaders of local Palestinian groups. All of it was in violation, obvious violation of international law. Following the establishment of Israel, a transfer of populations occurred. Several 100,000 Arabs who fled from Israel during the War of Independence were not allowed to return. Some had chosen to leave, assured by their Arab leaders that the fledgling country would not last a week. Others were forced to leave. At that time, approximately the same number of Jews were forced to leave Arab countries, another violation of international law, where they had lived for thousands of years. The difference was that Arab countries kept the Arabs who left Israel in refugee camps, where many of them still live more than half a century after leaving Israel. And Israel, on the other hand, fully integrated all the Jewish refugees from Arab countries into Israeli society, where many of their descendants now serve in the highest positions of Israeli life. Israel's establishment as the nation-state of the Jewish people by entirely lawful means is quite remarkable for several reasons. First, there is no country in the world that is as surrounded by hostile enemies as is Israel. It's been that way since 1948. Yet Israel sought the way of the pen rather than of the sword. It has needed the sword to survive, but its preference has always been for the pen. That is, for peaceful negotiations. Its peace treaty with Egypt in 1978, its peaceful abandonment of Gaza in 2005, and its many attempts to reach a peace agreement with the Palestinians are examples. Yet despite its entirely lawful origins, Israel is the only country in the world today whose origins, and therefore its very legitimacy, have been questioned by the General Assembly of the United Nations, by numerous member nations, and by many organizations that claim the mantle of human rights and the rule of law. Ironically, current attacks on Israel's legitimacy have taken the form of lawfare, the use of international law as a weapon. Any fair tribunal that judged Israel by universal standards would reject such attacks out of hand. But alas, international courts like the UN itself have been packed by those bitterly antagonistic to the nation-state of the Jewish people. For example, the misnamed International Court of Justice refuses to acknowledge that Israel, a country that deals with terror attacks and the threats of terror attacks on a regular basis, has any special security needs. As I've demonstrated, this phenomenon, questioning the very right of Israel to exist as the nation-state of the Jewish people, cannot be explained on legal grounds or on any other rational basis for that matter. So then, how can this worldwide attack on Israel alone be explained? In only one way. It is pure bigotry. And there's a word for this bigotry: anti-Semitism. If you have a better explanation for why the one country in the world whose right to exist is denied is also the one country that is the nation-state of the Jewish people, I ask you, what is it? I'm Alan Dershowitz, professor of law at Harvard University for Prager University.
Join Prager University. Click here to subscribe.
Dershowitz, and as I said, he's not what you'd call a right-wing zealot. He's a Harvard law professor. I don't have to tell you about Harvard. They're pretty much left of center politically and so on. But it sure pokes holes in Mr. Goheen's commentary from Camas, Washington. And I'm tempted to say, shame on you, Idaho State Journal, for putting this in there. But on the other hand, I'm glad they did, so I could get a chance to clear the air on the truth about the legality, the legitimacy of Israel as a state, who is being represented by a genuine statesman, not somebody who talks to their hat. And this kind of brings us full circle, because one of the things that happened that we hear about all the time now from the Arabs, and we're getting a lot of misinformation and garbage from the Islamic community, from the Muslim community. We get it right here at our university from people who know better but teach otherwise or whatever. And that has to do with, number one, peaceful Islam. Islam has never been peaceful, except when they subjugate a population. Then that population is at peace to a certain extent, as long as they pay the jizya, the tax. And the Crusades. Remember I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. First of all, Americans, even though we're called crusaders by the Arab population, the Muslims, Our country didn't even exist back during the Crusades. But they're talking about 1,000-year-old history. Islam has been attacking the whole civilized world for 14 centuries. They started off at the tip of the sword and they have never stopped, never stopped. But you hear about those evil crusaders, how they were the bad guys, how they went into the peaceful Arab lands and they stole their lands and they pillaged and they raped and they burned and so on and so forth. What a bunch of crapola. But you won't hear that, except on my show. You won't hear that in our university here. You won't hear that at the local mosque or from any of the Islamic apologists. So let me share with you another piece of information that puts things in perspective. And this says, Josh, we're going to go to number 1 there. Are we? Josh? Well, we may not go to number 1. Doggone, I've been wanting to show this to you for a couple of weeks too. Okay, so are we good to go? Is that the thumbs up on that? Okay, good. All right, here, let's put a little balance to this Crusader stuff and put an end to the lie about who's really the bad guy in the Crusaders versus the Islamists in the Middle East. Let's roll that one, Josh. Thank you.
Whenever you're dealing with an apologist for Islam or even a Muslim and you bring up jihad, almost immediately they kick back to you. Well, what about those terrible Crusades? Why, they're the moral justification for jihad. I mean, we're just as bad as they are, so let's not talk about jihad, okay? Let's talk about the Crusades. Well, what I would like to talk about here are facts. And it turns out I sat down and put together some work and I created a database of some 548 battles that Islam fought, jihad battles against classical civilization. And this aren't even all the battles. It really doesn't say much about Africa and India, Afghanistan and all that. It's primarily the battles against the classical civilization of Rome and Greece. So, 548 battles is a lot, and it's too much to even comprehend. So I created something which I call a dynamic battle map, in which you have a display of the Mediterranean, and a white dot means that this 20-year period, that's a new battle. So every time the screen changes, it's 20-year period. The colors white turn to red, and so you can see a history. This may seem a little confusing, but I think when you see it, you'll know exactly what I mean. And here it starts. Islam burst out of the Arabian Peninsula and immediately starts attacking the Middle East. And notice that it doesn't take long until they're crossing the Mediterranean and attacking southern France and Spain. Notice something here. Most people think of Islam, they think of Arabs, they think of desert, and yet here we see that Islam is projecting power throughout the Mediterranean. Notice how the little islands of the Mediterranean are getting hammered. The navy of Islam would attack coastal towns, kill, rob, rape, and then take slaves. So this whole battle map, as it unfolds, you're seeing slaves being taken. Over 1 million slaves were taken out of Europe into the Islamic world. That's something you don't think about much, but it's absolutely true. There were over 200 battles fought in Spain alone. And we also see, however, on the east coast in Turkey, that Islam is trying to break into Europe. Now, what's going to happen is, in Spain, this ongoing fight that lasted for 400 years, the Christians are going to push back the Muslims. But now then, what has happened over in the east is that Constantinople has fallen, and now then Eastern Europe is getting hammered. The jihad now comes to Eastern Europe. It's pushed out now of Spain. Northern Africa is now completely Islamic. The Middle East is completely Islamic. This is all jihad, relentless jihad. And why is it so relentless? Well, Muhammad was relentless in his jihad. And these people are good students of Islam, and so it's against the kafir, on and on. It was traditional that when the Sultan came to power, the brand new Sultan, he would immediately try to launch new wars because he was going to be noted in his Islamic history as to how well he fought against the kafir. So that's what the jihad looked like over that time period, 548 battles. But remember, when you bring up jihad, people want to bring up the Crusades. So I also prepared a dynamic battle map of all the offensive raids of the Crusaders. Let's watch it and make a comparison. And so it begins. The Crusades enter into Turkey and the Middle East. Battles go on, but aren't there far fewer than you thought there might be? And here we go. The last battles are fought, and that is the end of the Crusades. So now then we can talk about some facts. Yes, there were Crusades, but notice they ended centuries ago, and jihad is being practiced today. Jihad has been with us for 1,400 years. There is no comparison between jihad and the Crusades, certainly not a moral comparison. And when you're looking at the Crusades, remember, in one sense, all of the Crusades were defensive wars. Why? Well, as we saw on the first jihad map, it was Islam that came out of Arabia and conquered the Middle East, a Christian Middle East. And so the Crusaders were trying to free their Christian brothers and sisters from jihad. So there's no moral comparison at all. The motivation of the Crusaders was to free Christians. The purpose of jihad is to enslave the kafir. So the next time you hear somebody talk about, oh, those dreadful Crusades, you've seen some facts about the matter. Why don't you pipe up and tell them you know, you don't really know the matter?
I think that's illustrative, and that's probably the best I've seen as far as giving you a visual on the truth about the Crusades. You notice that little tiny sliver, which was mostly down through Israel, what we would call modern-day Israel. Back then it was called Palestine. There were no Palestinian people. There was no government called Palestine. The Romans controlled that, and I think at one point the Greeks, I get a little confused on that part. But you notice, and Kafir, by the way, I think it's spelled K-A-F-F-I-R. I'm not quite sure of the spelling. Kafir really is a diminutive. It's a slur. It's calling those of us who are not Muslim a dirty word, so to speak. So when you hear him using the word kafir, he's using that pejoratively as it would be used by a pure Islamist, a pure student of Islam, a Muslim. They refer to us as kafir, and it's meant pejoratively. But you see the truth of the matter, how much different it is from the crapola you see in the Idaho State Journal, perhaps, or you'll see it on television about those evil crusaders and the Saudis, which the Saudis have been controlling this storyline for a long, long time. They have put tons of petrodollars into this nation as well as the rest of the world to distort the truth of what's really going on. And it's interesting about the Muslims, any time that Islam is threatened, first thing they do is they start screaming, ah, you evil kafirs, you're beating up on us, we're victims. And then you look at that map, and remember also that the Crusaders came in some 400 to 500 years after the jihads against everybody else began. And they came in as a response to the Christians saying, they're killing us. We need some help here. We need to be able to visit the Holy Lands and make our pilgrimages, and we can't do it because the jihadists are slaughtering us. 400 years, almost 500 years, I think, before Christendom actually pushed back. And then Pope Urban II actually said, you know, enough is too much. We have to do something about this. And they got the Crusades going. And yet look how little territory the Crusaders were ever even involved in. And even though they did stay in some places, I think, for 150 or 200 years, and they were eventually pushed out of Jerusalem and other places, they didn't go in there to dominate. Now, there's an interesting dichotomy here. And it's an interesting, you need to kind of look at this from two different ways. The Muslims love to cast aspersions on the Jews, the Christians, or anybody else that they hate, which is just about everybody, including a lot of their own people. The Sunnis and the Shia hate each other, and they're all Muslims. But they like to cast aspersions and do name calling and all that. But they don't like it too much when you take the mantle, the cloak off it, and you show the truth. And what is the truth? The truth is that for 1,400 years, the Islam has been spread at the tip of the sword. Now you remember, those of you who are Christians, and if you are not Christian, but if you've read the New Testament, you'll see where Jesus told the disciples, go forth and make disciples of all men being inclusive of men, women, children, all that. Go forth and make disciples of all men, not at the tip of the sword. The Christendom was not being spread at the tip of the sword. Yes, I know about the Inquisitions. Please, I don't need to hear that. We're talking about proselytizing. And there's a lot of difference between jihad at the tip of the sword, convert or die. And let me show you the truth about divinity and your salvation. A lot of truth. Okay, we just have a couple minutes left, so we'll show that again. We're going to talk about a couple of these things again because sometimes we need to be reminded. I wanted to share with you quickly, did you see where Senator Guthrie introduced this bill to stop eminent domain use by cities to clear pathways for their green zones and their walking paths and the stuff here? A bill to block the use of eminent domain by cities to create hiking trails, bike paths, and greenways has cleared the Idaho Senate. The bill passed on a 20-13 vote on Monday, that was back in February, and now goes to a House committee and another floor vote. Well, March the 11th, this is today. This is from the Associated Press. A bill to block the use of eminent domain by cities to create hiking trails, bike paths, and greenways has cleared a House committee. Started in the Senate. Usually, if there's going to be a fight, if it starts in the House, it has a real fight uphill to get through the Senate. But this started in the Senate. And so now it's going through the House, and it has apparently passed the House committee. The Idaho Statesman in Boise reports that the House Local Affairs Committee on Tuesday sent the bill to the full House where it is expected to pass. The Idaho Senate approved the bill last month. Republican Senator Jim Guthrie of McCammon sponsored the bill and says eminent domain gives cities too much power. Backers of the bill say green belts are nice but not essential like roads. Opponents say greenways make cities more livable, provide alternative transportation routes, and boy is that a crock, and reduce the number of vehicles on the road. And if you believe that, then you honestly believe that somebody that lives down in the Indian Hills and works downtown is going to walk to work on that trail every day. I've got a bridge, I'd love to sell it to you. And it's in good repair, and I'll make you a real good deal on it. The whole greenways thing has been such a farce, and it's laughable. And there are areas where the greenway, if you want to call it that, go to the beginning of it up by the plant over there, and you've got Hobo Junction with the guys living in the bushes, but you don't have much of a greenway. Well, anyway, I want to remind you, so kudos to Jim Guthrie. Jim and I disagree on some things occasionally, but I sure appreciate him doing that. And I'm sure he'd appreciate a welcome phone call saying, thanks a lot, Jim, one that I will be making. I want to remind you about Aaron Hayes' program every Sunday at 5 o'clock, educational program, the first 700 years of Christianity. God bless you. Thank you so much for joining us. Hope you'll be here again next week at this same time. In the meantime, have a good, safe week. And keep up with the news, and we'll bring you some more next week. God bless you. Thank you. Good night.